By now, you've probably seen this video that's been circulating on social media that was filmed from within an ICE detention center in Miami known as the Krome facility that shows several men in a small waiting room-like area being held, where the person filming states that many of these men have been held for at least a month with limited access to water, food, and healthcare. And if you haven't, that was filmed by this account here, Osiris982, where they have 4 videos describing the conditions to which they are being subjected to. Conditions that family members of those in detention at Krome describe as them being treated like dogs. There have also been accounts, for example, from Colton Lexus from Internal Services LLC, who have stated that 3 migrants have died at this facility due to a lack of access to water, being limited to 1 cup of water a day. And while I was not able to independently verify that particular statement, I was able to find some stories where lack of medical care at the Krome facility has led to the death, for example, here of a Ukrainian man who became ill at the Krome's facility, did not receive adequate care, and then later would die at a local hospital. Now, claims by Internal Services LLC have stated that this facility could hold 500 people, but is currently overstaffed to at least in the thousands. And for the Krome facility, this is nothing new. Because even as far back as 1995, when Congress was essentially looking into the Krome's facility, they noted that at the time the capacity was 226 people to be held at the facility, but they were holding as many as 400 people. Essentially, the facility was being overcrowded even as far back as 1995. However, overcrowding and poor living conditions is not something that is unique to the Krome facility. This is something that is rampant through the U.S. immigration system, as we can see in this report by the Office of the Inspector General for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, taking data from 2020 and 2023. This report showed that 71% of facilities which were inspected did not meet ICE's environmental health and safety standards, with bathrooms but also dormitory walls showing mold, peeling paint, rust. And if you go look up that report, you'll see all the facilities that were listed in that report, of which Krome was one of them. As for the claim by Osiris that they were not receiving medical health care or adequate medical health care, this is also nothing new to the U.S. immigration system, or in particular to ICE detention. This is something that has been rampant for years. In that same report by the Office of the Inspector General, they found that a lot of these facilities were not meeting standards in relation to chronic and dental care or even medical staffing. I even touch on this in my article, Concentration Camp USA, which you can find at my Patreon, which again is 100% free, where I specifically talk about the Adelanto Detention Center in California and some of the medical neglect faced by ICE detainees at that facility, where they found that detainees were often not provided adequate medical attention, that there were times where detainees had appointments with doctors that were canceled without explanation, that detainees did not receive prescribed medication on time or at all in some cases. And despite the fact that they had 2 dentists on site, the dental care at this facility was so lacking that in some cases detainees had their teeth falling out because they were waiting so long for adequate dental care. And when they were asked why this was happening, the dentists at the facility were stating that this wouldn't happen if the detainees simply maintained their own dental hygiene through flossing or brushing their teeth. However, a lot of the dental hygiene products required to maintain adequate dental hygiene are paywalled through commissary, of which some of these detainees do not have access to because they don't have the required funds, to which the dentist said, well, they could simply, for example, in the case of floss, rip strings out of their socks to floss with. The poor living conditions, lack of access to medical care, the overcrowding are just a few of the things that detainees have to face in ICE detention. There's also the use of excessive force by guards. For example, there was the use of excessive force here in Adelanto, California, where detainees had launched a hunger strike to protest the poor living conditions that they were having to endure, at which point many of these detainees were put into solitary confinement for days against ICE's own rules, and oftentimes were even met with the use of pepper spray. And even then, mentioning all this that I've mentioned, it's only the tip of the iceberg of things that detainees in ICE detention have had to face. There's the fact that women have been sterilized without their consent, that women have been sexually assaulted, the fact that migrants have been sprayed with dangerous chemicals, all of which you can read here on Concentration Camp USA at my Patreon. And when we talk about these conditions faced by ICE detainees, what you'll often hear from the right is, well, this is prison. It's not supposed to be comfortable. They should have came the right way. This is a prison, right? And the thing is that ICE detention is not a prison. And that's per the handbooks that they give detainees when they enter ICE detention. Detention is not prison. It may feel like you are in prison, but this detention facility is a place to have you stay while it is determined whether you will be deported or allowed to remain in the United States. It is not supposed to be a prison. And even so, prisons shouldn't be subjecting their prisoners to inhumane conditions. The point is this, okay? We are all shocked by what we are hearing about what is happening in ICE detention centers. The fact that they are overcrowded, that they are lacking medical assistance, lacking food and water. But this isn't new. This has been happening in the United States for decades under both Republicans and Democrats. And right now it's significantly more visible because this immigration blitz has subjected tens of thousands of more undocumented immigrants and asylum seekers to this. But know that this here is prevalent. The United States operates in an incredibly cruel way when dealing with detainees in ICE detention centers. It's like the cruelty is the point. And more concerning now, it's that they've expanded this. It's not even just undocumented immigrants. As with the case of Fabian Schmidt, we've seen that even legal immigrants are being subjected to this. So what I ask here is please don't let these stories die. Talk about them. And not just these that are happening now. Talk about the stories that have already happened. The women who have been sexually assaulted, the women who have been sterilized, the men who have been held in solitary confinement for days, the men who have attempted to take their own lives because they've been held in detention, in some cases for years, without any knowledge of when they will finally be put before a judge, if they will even get that chance. And please, as this administration continues to do this shit, document, archive, save all this information, and continue to spread it about.